All right, so I apologize for the poor quality of these notes, but so this is where, the rubber hits the road as far as how these are used in real time, real world. We talked about the quadratic that starts with a negative 16t squared or x squared. This is actually the formula. The negative 16 or h of t here stands for the height at a certain time. So like if you wanted to figure out the height at 3 seconds, you would change t to 3 in here and then all the way across to figure out how high it was after those 3 seconds. The negative 16 represents gravity. And it's actually, like we talked about, it's actually an average because it goes up and then comes back down. Gravity actually pulls at negative 32 feet per second squared, pulls straight down. But part of the time it's going up, part of the time it's going down. So that's why it's an average. It's negative 16 only for feet per second squared. Down here in meters per second squared, it is 2.9. Let me see what the key says. 4.9 meters per second squared. Okay, v of 0 is the initial upward velocity. So like if you're shooting an arrow out of a bow, it's whatever strength or whatever power is behind that shot. That's the initial upward velocity. H of 0 is the starting height. And that's why it's got this 0 here, is because that's the time is 0. So that's why it's the starting height. And that's why this is 0, because that's the starting or the initial upward velocity. T is time in seconds. Okay. So a couple years ago, Miss Locke and I came up with an acronym to help you organize your thoughts and stuff with these word problems. The A stands for what is the question asking, or what is the problem asking? Okay, so that helps you determine the variable. What you're solving for. The I is important info. Okay, that helps you decide what to substitute. And then M is the method used. Okay. You don't have to write down the method used, but in any word problem, you might have to try to figure out the formula or how you would come up with it, and that's what method you would use. So let's look at the example here. It says a ball is tossed in the air from the ground, and the equation is h of t equals negative 16t squared plus 144t. So if you compare this equation to this equation, the one on the left has 3 terms. The one on the right only has 2 terms. It's missing this last term here. Remember, h of 0 stands for the starting height. Since it is tossed in the air from the ground, the starting height is 0. So you could, if you wanted to, put a plus 0 there. Okay. Now, this first thing, the question is, how high is the ball after 3 seconds? So, you know, you got a question, how high? I wouldn't answer that question 15 minutes. I would answer it in feet. So it is asking you to find the height. So I'm going to put H question mark because that's what it's asking me to find. And then the information that's important is 3 seconds. Seconds is a measurement of time. So that means T is 3. So that tells me what I'm going to be substituting or what I'm looking for. So I'm going to go into the equation and I'm going to take out all the T's and I'm going to change them to 3. So this H of 3 means the height for 3 seconds or after 3 seconds equals negative 16 times 3 squared plus 144 times 3. And then we don't have to put the plus 0. So 3 squared is 9. Negative 16 times 9 is negative 144. 144 times 3. I think that's 432. Let me see. Yep. Okay. And then when I put that together, 432 minus 144 is 288. So this says the height after 3 seconds is 288 feet. So you always want to answer your word problems as a sentence, especially when you're doing a test. So the height after 3 seconds was 288 feet. Okay. So B says, what's the maximum height the ball will reach? Remember that these quadratics, they are either right facing, upside facing U's or downside facing U's. And that's determined by the first number. Since this is a negative, that means it's a down facing U. So that maximum height is going to be the vertex. So we need to find the vertex. So we got to find the X, which remember is the opposite of B over 2A. So B is 144. So that's negative 144 divided by 2 times negative 16. Negative 144 divided by negative 32. Let's see what that is. And that's 4.5. Now that X, or it's actually T, is 4.5. That means it reached its maximum height after 4.5 seconds. That's not what the question asked us to find. It said, what is the maximum height? So we have to go in and we have to change T to 4.5. Figure out how high it was. So 4.5 squared is 20.25. 144 times 4.5 is 648. So this is negative 324 plus 648. So the height after 4.5 seconds is 324 feet. And let's see, if we look at this graph over here, this green one that I circled here, it says after 3 seconds it was 288 feet. and our maximum is 4.5 seconds, it makes sense that it was higher because it hadn't reached the turning point yet. So we got our maximum height was 324 feet. Then we have this question: when will the ball hit the ground? So I'm going to rewrite our equation. H of t equals negative 16 t squared plus 144t. Okay, and it says when will the ball hit the ground? If I said when are you coming to dinner, you wouldn't say 15 miles. You would answer me in a measurement of time. So it's asking us to find time, and it does tell us what the height is. If you have an equation with two variables and it asks you to find one of them, you have to have the other one to substitute. This right here, it says when will it hit the ground? That's the height. We're trying to find the time that the height is on the ground. So 0 equals negative 16 t squared plus 144 t. So I know that 144 can be divided by 16. Okay, so I'm going to go through and I'm going to take out the greatest common factor, negative 16t, because I can divide both of these terms by negative 16t. And that leaves me these two. 0 equals negative 16t times t minus 9. That's how we solve by factoring. We did that last week sometime. So now I'm going to take each one of these and I'm going to set them equal to 0. So negative 16t equals 0 and t minus 9 equals 0. This one, divide both sides by negative 16. So t equals 0. This one, add 9 to both sides. So t equals 9. So let's look at what the graph looks like again. Okay, so the ball was tossed in the air from the ground. It went up and it came back down, hit the ground. And we know that after 4.5 seconds, it was 324 feet in the air. It says, when did it hit the ground? There were 2 times that it was on the ground. It was tossed from the ground, and then 9 seconds later, it hit the ground. This is the one it's asking us for. If they wanted the first one also, they would have said, when was it on the ground? But it said, when did it hit the ground? So it hit the ground after 9 seconds. Sorry about that noise. I got to. Okay. So, Kate, do you have any questions?
I think I'm good.
Okay. All righty. Well, if you have any questions, feel free to ask.